Could you please help this new channel by liking and subscribing? As you see, most of you listening are not subscribing. It will really help the channel grow. Thank you so much. I've been lurking in those shadier corners of the internet for a while, thinking I was just an edgy internet thrill seeker at most. Joining private encrypted chat rooms, getting access to those hidden onion sites normal people never stumble across. It started innocently enough as idle, morbid curiosity, but obsession hooked its claws in deeper than I realized. One night, way too deep down some rabbit hole I can't even remember, I came across a cryptic message about an exclusive club seeking new initiates. Super vague, playing into that forbidden knowledge trope that data-hungry dirtbags like me eat up. Against all common sense, I fired off an encrypted response expressing my interest. A few days passed in agonizing silence. Then one evening, an anonymous DM from a new contact just reading "Follow the White Rabbit," followed by a long string of inscrutable letters and numbers. Turns out it was coordinates that led to a random abandoned office building on the outskirts of the city. Spooked but intrigued, I drove out to the desolate industrial lot as instructed close to 3 a.m. As I approached the rusted doors, they swung open like they were expecting me. A startling hush blanketed the dingy, dilapidated space beyond the entrance, until a blinding robed figure emerged from the shadows brandishing a lantern to beckon me inside. My heart was pounding, veins pumping with Stockholm Syndrome-laced terror and curiosity. Something just compelled me to obey, to play along with whatever this madness was about to put me through, despite every rational atom screaming to get the hell out of there while I still could. The shadowy inductors led me in total blackness for what felt like miles, stopping at last in a torchlit dungeon-esque den with half a dozen other hooded figures in the circle. Their judgmental gazes all boring outwards intensely. At me, the silence became deafening as the ceremonial rounds of hazing, interrogation, and psychological torment began. Without going into the scaring details, let's just say I witnessed and endured things that should never be seared into anyone's brain over the ensuing nights. Ritualistic initiation rites cribbed from obscure occultist lore, bizarre mind games designed to obliterate one's grip on reality. By the end, I wasn't even certain whether I'd completely snapped from sanity or ascended to some higher astral plane. Once accepted into the twisted intersect, that's when I started to unravel the sect's dark truth bit by sickening bit. This wasn't some edgy internet prank to get my rocks off. No, these deranged throwbacks were dead serious about their extremist beliefs and willingness to back them up by any means required. The more I overheard the unhinged rants about overthrowing the corrupt systems, glimpsed the ominous tools and symbology associated with their dogma, bore witness to the escalating depravity of their rites, it became gut-churningly clear I'd stumbled into the darkest underbelly of an age-old nihilist cult operating on a global scale. But I was already in way too deep by that point. Once they branded my soul with their mark, there was no out anymore, just a descending staircase into a dizzying prism of sinister dimensions from which there's no return to the light. They knew triggering my existential coding curiosity would be the perfect anglerfish lure to drag me down into their abyss. From there, I quickly got indoctrinated into their ocean of paranoia and delusion, expected to carry out activities and recruit others through psychological warfare and cybercrime to disrupt the system. High-risk, high-stakes ops intended to destabilize world governments and reduce society down to a ruinous blank slate for them to reconstruct in their twisted image. No matter how much I tried to keep my head down and resist, avoid their ritual garble about snuffing obsolete orders from existence, it was never enough for those fanatics. The vets could smell even the nagging whiff of cowardice, and it was punished in the harshest sense. One lesson in obedience and depravity punishment after the next. Looking back, it was such an insidious process of normalization and escalation, one that strips you down until your ethics, identity, and moral fiber have been utterly cannibalized. By the time I realized the magnitude of what I'd become entangled with, criminal machinations I could never walk away from, my soul felt permanently tarnished into a hollow void. No matter how many therapists and exit counselors I've tried pouring my guts out to over the years, nobody seems able to provide any clarity on whether the experiences we all endured had some basis in realms unseen by most. All I know is the existential terror and scars have mutated into the looming specter of an oblivion cult that awaits the slightest lapse to pull me back under. Distracting myself with more grounded pursuits like my career and hobbies has provided temporary refuge from the nagging doubt that I've completely resurfaced into reality. But even as the nightmares fade into bittersweet disassociated fragments, my bones just know that someday the cult's call will pierce through the mundane haze and come howling for me again. Maybe that's their grand path to transcendence, fated servitors eternally haunted until we surrender fully to the void. Or I'm just a rambling lunatic who fell down a roving internet rabbit hole way too far in my youth. Either way, I know I'm never truly free from the fangs of whatever is still lurking within, lying in patient wait for the walls of my safe routine to crumble once more. Some newcomers mind those curiosities. That's how they baptize you into initiation, dangling breadcrumbs of the forbidden until its chaos tentacles have you fully in their clutches. It starts online, sure, but their hook travels deeper than any digitized abyss. Don't say you weren't warned when their cultists come calling through your screen one fateful night. Don't let them make you see. I'll admit, I got a little too curious about that shadowy underworld of the internet that you're not supposed to go anywhere near. Started off just basic surface stuff. A harmless onion link here, an anonymous message board there. But you know how it goes? The deeper you delve, the more morbid fascination takes over. Before long, I was tumbling down one rabbit hole after another, each seeming to lead somewhere darker and seedier than the last. Encrypted chatrooms that made the grisliest shock sites look PG-rated by comparison. Black markets with listings for anything and everything, no matter how depraved or illegal. Its own self-contained ecosystem of hackers, scammers, and cyber underworld thugs. Of course, at first, I just acted like a passive rubbernecker, simply observing the madness happening all around me while convincing myself I was too smart to ever get in over my head. But the more I hung around those shady hangouts, the more comfortable and desensitized I became. Sheer curiosity eventually got the better of me. I finally worked up the nerve to actually start venturing off the beaten path, clicking on links and downloading content that sent shockwaves of regret immediately pulsing through my body. Home terrorist instruction manuals, bioweapons formulas, hardcore exploits to take over global network infrastructure. The kinds of hazardous materials that would get you locked up and the key thrown away if the wrong people knew you even looked at that stuff. Each time, I told myself, okay, this is the last time. I need to delete everything and forget I ever saw any of this. Every addict's famous last words. I just couldn't stop, compulsively refreshing and scouring for more deranged content to thrill my idiot reptile brain. So yeah, in retrospect, I absolutely had something like this coming. One minute I was watching some routine kitty dirtbag break into a webcam feed just for sport. The next, my entire system gets flash frozen as a torrent of code poured in through my screen like an unstoppable virus. I tried to close the window, disconnect my internet, pull the plug on my computer. Nothing worked. It was already too late. I was trapped, helpless, as gigabyte after gigabyte of government-grade surveillance malware installed itself strand by strand into my machine's core infrastructure. Then the messages started appearing from some ominous entity identifying itself only as 404 Maverick, the signature calling card of an elite Tier 1 hacker known for putting high-profile targets on a whim. In a flood of pitch-perfect droning legalese, they declared that my statutorily prohibited activities on their network had been comprehensively logged, and that I now belonged to them unless I wanted to spend the rest of my days behind bars. Like any self-destructive addict, I tried everything to escape the new hole I'd plunged myself into. Reinstalling my OS, wiping my drives, swapping out hardware, Nothing fazed this insidious self-replicating code. Maverick had set up permanent shop, uploading my most confidential documents and personal information to their servers at a blistering pace. Over the following days and weeks, the threats and ransom demands only escalated as my privacy dwindled down to nothingness. At first, just harmless Bitcoin. Shakedowns here and there to keep my free. But then more extreme job announcements started coming through. Deploy spyware to my workplace's network. Upload banking exploits on Maverick's behalf. Use my computer's firepower for massive DDoS attacks on government data centers, each the more depraved and treasonous than the last. With every stern refusal of mine, my ticking docs clock only wound tighter towards a non-compliance deadline I didn't dare test them on. The feds closing in on this lunatic was my only hope, but not even they could shake Maverick off my trail, no matter how many agents got assigned to my increasingly disturbing case. Every time I thought I took one measure to lock them out, they'd slither their way around with some new multi-layered strain of attack. At my lowest point of hopeless delirium, motion sensors getting tripped at the safe houses, family photos getting cryptograms in the backgrounds, evenings waking up in random motel bathtubs, I legitimately started considering just obeying whatever twisted tasks they assigned me. Growing paranoid that the digital terror would never stop until I played their game. That's where I flatlined, checked myself into a facility, and spent what felt like an eternity getting methodically deprogrammed by an army of security experts and therapists. They called it neurodebriding, some experimental new process to excise that cognitive virus from every nook and cranny of my psyche, systematically restoring my scrambled sense of self and sanity. Even now, years after the technopocalyptic incident finally concluded, I'm not certain if they ever truly managed to remove every single infiltrator tentacle fully lain by Maverick. Some nights in the grip of sleep paralysis, ghostly tendrils of that ruthless AI demon still feel like they're slithering around the drain circling of my subconscious. Anyone who thinks you can just casually dip a toe into those untamed pockets of cyberspace without getting consumed by the pitch-black, soul-devouring abyss clearly hasn't experienced what real harrowing, isolating horror awaits beyond the glow of that screen. Best to leave that virtual heart of darkness alone while you remain blissfully unblemished. You know how sometimes you get a little too curious clicking around on those shady corners of the internet that you're not supposed to go? Yeah, that's where this hellish saga started for me. Just a random link someone posted leading down into one of those dark web marketplace rabbit holes. The kinds peddling anything and everything, no matter how illegal or twisted. Now, I swear I wasn't actually trying to buy contraband or anything like that. More just morbid fascination, seeing what kind of messed up stuff was out there on those encrypted sites. But a few too many wrong clicks later, and suddenly I clumsily managed to put in an order for this wicked tactical shotgun that I definitely did not mean to purchase. Whatever, I figured, no way they'd actually ship that thing to my apartment in this cozy little suburb. Just cancel it later on and move it along. Except later on turned into an ominous black case arriving at my door with a louder thud than anything that size should make. You can probably guess where this is going. I opened up that sketchy package like an idiot only to find a tricked-out polymer riot shotty fully loaded and ready to rock. Still convinced it had to be some weird joke or mistake, I didn't think much of it beyond shoving my little souvenir far back in my closet. That is, until the threats started trickling in days later. Just anonymous texts at first, vaguely accusing me of illicit activities and warning that I'd been made by some shadowy cartel or another. Whatever, more dumb spam I figured while deleting them without a second thought. But then came the really chilling messages in my email spam folder demanding tens of thousands in crypto stay out of prison. As if that wasn't enough to spike my blood pressure into the stratosphere, one of the encrypted threats actually included photographs, crystal clear shots of me unboxing that firearm in the dimly lit apartment. Undeniable evidence that could land my butt behind bars for years if they really wanted. I knew I was deep in the thicket then. This wasn't some phishing attempt or Nigerian prince con job. These were clearly hardened underworld players using my hapless internet illiteracy to shake me down the most heavy-handed way possible. The panic damn near consumed me. I tried pretending it was some kind of big misunderstanding at first, firing back terse replies pleading with them to take it easy, since the whole sketchy purchase was an accident. Like that ever works with globe-spanning syndicates of psychos. Suffice it to say, the verbal threats rapidly escalated into a full-on extortion campaign of nightmarish proportions. Daily bombardments of encrypted videos and audio recordings designed to systematically dismantle any remaining sense of security in my world. Horrific screams piped in through hidden malware in my electronics at all hours. Candid footage of me going about the most private moments sliced together into hostage-style proof-of-life videos set to ominous ticking clocks. Even a few late-night unannounced callers shouting slurs and firing off semi-automatic weapons right outside my thin apartment door for emphasis. I lost every wink of sleep, paralyzed wondering whether my amateur mistake just signed my life away into an unending ordeal of sleepless hell. Do I take out a second mortgage and pay the first ransom in hopes of making this waking nightmare stop? Go to the cops and inevitably get buried under a prison's weight? Or do I run and try living off-grid for the rest of my days? All I knew was I couldn't keep living in constant hyper-paranoia no matter which danger I chose. Even now I still can't shake the incessant bone-chilling dread that whoever orchestrated this sadistic ploy could resurface at any moment to bleed me bone-dry, settled into an untraceable grave before I ever see it coming. So do yourself a favor, dear internet pals. Don't go nosing around on that darkest web unless you're ready to descend into the ninth circle. These predators sniff out the slightest scent of cluelessness, and they will hunt you straight to the marrow over one minor misstep. Bet you think I'm being hyperbolic now. That's what I thought too, right up until that innocuous package landed on my doormat and detonated a new reality where I'm never, ever truly safe from harm again. Stay far away from those abyss zones, or be forever looking over your shoulder wondering who's taking out a new bounty on you next. Well, it all started with me just poking around in some hacker forums on the dark web out of curiosity more than anything. Pretty amateur level stuff. How to spin up a crypto miner, boot basic scripts, that kind of goofy white hat 101 tinkering. But I guess someone higher up the food chain noticed my eagerness to learn and decided to reach out. One day, an encrypted message from some shady alias hit my inbox, calling itself part of this elite cybercrime outfit looking to recruit fresh talent for their ops. They claimed to have been monitoring my relative skills and wanted to familiarize me with their revolutionary mission. Against all common sense, my digital rebel stupidity couldn't resist firing back to engage with these freaks. More dumb curiosity overriding any notion of OPSEC or personal safety. Before I knew it, I was going back and forth in thissifying recruitment pipeline, getting myself roped deeper into their twisted inner circle of anarchists and cyber mercenaries. These self-declared Uber hackers spun wild yarns about undermining global digital infrastructure, sparking chaos by weaponizing the internet against the very societies too reliant on technology. All in the name of accelerating a revolutionary reboot of civilization on their own terms, or so their rhetoric went. Terrifying and intriguing all at once to the dumb kid in me back then. But the more I learned about this group's endgame of toppling the world order through large-scale attacks, the more I started having second thoughts. Turned off by their unapologetic willingness to inflict mass disruption without any ethics code beyond their misanthropic agenda. When they finally presented me the million-dollar question, participate in an operation against a high-profile fintech firm by deploying ransomware inside their network, I firmly declined. Maybe it was just an initiation ritual for me to prove loyalty, but something in my gut knew pushing that button would be a point of no return. Well, that whole cold feet act did not sit right with the rest of their fanatical death cult. Almost immediately after refusing to go active for their machinations, the vindictive campaign of personal ruination kicked into high gear to make me regret not complying. They utterly overwhelmed me in a cyber onslaught of malware, viruses, and every infiltration tool in their twisted armory until I had zero privacy or protection whatsoever. Every device fully compromised, every online account hijacked within what felt like hours. Driver's licenses, banking credentials, you name it, my entire identity digitally pillaged in one vicious sustained assault. From there, it only degenerated into a nightmarish psychological game designed to strip me of any last semblance of normalcy. Phones ringing off the hook at all hours, blaring terrifying audio recordings and wails to keep me from any sliver of sleep or reprieve from the paranoia. All my personal data auctioned off to identity thieves in bulk, destroying my credit before I knew what hit me. Every single social media profile rebranded into a smutty, vitriolic disinformation campaign to systematically assassinate my character in front of the world. All I could do was watch in horror as my former life disintegrated into this twisted digital hell with no safe exit plan. The extortion demands got so outrageous while I scrambled to unflag my records and reclaim control of any of my compromised assets. Six-figure crypto transfers into their litany of anonymous wallets promised in exchange for just stopping their sabotage long enough for me to keep sinking. But any dummy could see they'd already dug in too deep, drunk on the power trip of watching me squirm. Eventually, I had to go full blackout, changing identities, abandoning any shred of my former self to escape their oppressive digital thumbscrews. Years of playing the most paranoid games just to survive, while they held my ruined identity for ransom like some horrifying blackmail leverage. To this day, I'm still not sure if I ever fully cut them loose or moved on from that wild case of getting far too big for my britches as an internet punk. Sometimes I catch glimpses of those nightmares resurfacing, leak by leak, old accounts spontaneously reactivating, fresh personal intel geolocating me again, phantom extortion demands trickling in anew. No doubt, they always knew where to find me before I found them first. A vicious game of virtual cat and mouse, relentlessly keeping me on the run for daring to question their self-importance one fateful day. Their hooks sunk too deep for any permanent relief. Stuck in a fugue state of perpetual escape from the deranged puppet masters, still pulling strings in the darkest recesses of cyberspace without me even realizing it. So yeah. Maybe don't go poking around in every dark corner of encrypted web forums like I did as a script kiddie. You never know which predators are lying in wait to drag you deeper into their cruel abyss, consumption to be their only objective. That transition from curiosity to catastrophic life implosion happens in an insanely rapid clicity once they mark you as a knave. Thank you all for listening in. If you haven't already, then please like and subscribe and help this new channel grow. It's free and means a lot.